Welcome to Chuck Builds. I've got a double header for us today in relation to my new truck that I've gotten, the GMC Sierra 2025. It has the auto stop functionality where the engine turns off every time you hit a red light, and it's kind of driving me nuts. So I purchased an auto stop eliminator. I have to take apart a large portion of the dash to get this installed. So I figured at the same time I would install this phone mount from Course Motorsports, which has a hole here that'll go into my dash, and use an existing screw to hold it in place against my dash with a little foam pad so it doesn't scratch anything. It's got a little ball mount that screws on, and then a wireless charger that will connect all of that so I can charge my phone and have it up in quick, easy to reach area. My truck does have the wireless charging in the center console, but I keep walking away and leaving my phone in my truck, and I just kind of miss having it at arm's reach. So I'll be doing that. And in order to power this, I'm going to run this USB-C cable. I found one that's extra thin on the end here, and I'm going to hopefully get it tucked up right against the edge like that so we barely see the wire. And I'm going to run this wire through the dash while we have it apart. While we're taking apart the dash for the Autostop eliminator, while it's all apart, I'm going to use this. I have a USB-C to USB-C adapter that I need to test to make sure it works. And then I have a little DC power converter from 12 volt to 5 volt, little buck converter. And I also have 2 fuse taps. So I can tap into the fuses on my truck, get it all wired up nice and clean, run this through the dash, and get it plugged up with hopefully no wires in sight and no risk of draining my battery by tapping the correct fuse. This is going to be a little tricky, I think, because I got to take a lot of the dash apart, and I haven't done that on this truck yet. So follow along, and I'll try and show everything as I do it. So the first panel that needs to come off is this one here. I'm going to try and do my best to keep everything illuminated. We're going to take some plastic trim tools to bust this panel off. It should be just clips, and I think we slide it a little bit. I'm going to try and pry kind of from the bottom just so it's out of sight. And that came off very easy, just a bunch of clips. The next panel that we're gonna have to get off is right here, and there's a little fuse indicator and a little bit of a pull tab. So we should be able to just get a finger in there and gently pry this off with our hands. We're gonna need this fuse pin out with the labels to use for the wire I'm gonna run for the phone charger. So we're going to keep this nearby. So now I'll be taking a 7mm socket and loosening up this bolt right here underneath the air vent. And we don't want to lose that, so I'm going to put it in my cup holder. And then the other bolts we're going to get is down here, further in. So with those 2 screws undone, we're going to remove these 2 as well. So with those other 2 screws undone, we're going to come get these on the side as well. You should be able just to pop this off. Just a few clips on the inside. So now that we have the 4 screws removed, 1 from here, 2 here, and the 4th here, we're going to just kind of pull gently on this plastic for this panel here, and it should kind of start to separate. And there should be some clips there, in there. So 3 clips across the screen, and then 4 clips, 5 clips across the side here. They all came out pretty easy. So next up, we have 4 screws here underneath the display. So we're going to come through and get all those out. So we're going to come around to the driver's side of the vehicle. And we need to get this panel off as well. And it just unclips. And what we're looking for is, I believe, this bolt right here. And I believe what we're looking for is this bolt right here to get us side access to these screws. So go ahead and unscrew this. So the next thing we'll be doing is grabbing this piece here. There's another little fuse box logo here. If you just kind of get your finger, it'll pop out. and then follow it around with some firm pulls, and that'll come off. And once we get that panel off, there's one more screw right here we need to get to, and I'm afraid I'm gonna block the camera while I get to it. It's underneath the steering wheel in the center. And once that screws out, we should be able to just pop out this other panel as well. It comes out a little bit at an angle. So we're gonna get our attention back to this display. Okay, so that was a little scary sounding, but it was just these two clips were in there. So it kind of comes out more towards you and less up, but nothing broke and we still have them. So now that we have this piece of plastic out of the way here on the side of the underneath the engine start button, the screen, climate, and toggles are all one piece. So we're gonna kind of get our hand around and behind right here. And there's a hinge up here where there's hooks. So it's kind of hanging on like with a claw almost. So we're gonna pull the bottom to get that hinge, and then we should be able to kind of work it out towards us. So I'm clipping this in because I made a mistake. This is me from the future. I've got the whole screen, everything put back together. But I didn't notice till I was reassembling that when this edge of the screen is down, that it's pretty sharp. And I ended up kind of nicking the edges of the cup holder, soft plastic up here on both sides just by letting it rest. I really got some corners cut into there. I think I'll survive the damage. It's not too bad, but I wanted to make sure to tell you, put a blanket down, put a microfiber cloth, put something with some cushion when you rest that screen so that you don't chew up your soft plastics up here. All right, and we've got it out. So I'm about to show you a pretty poor camera angle, but we have the screen off of the panel, and behind here you can see we have some cables in the way. I'm not going to loosen this one, even though that's kind of the one that's holding us the tightest, because I can still access the cable I need right down here for the Autostop Eliminator. All right, so I've got you zoomed in. This is the toggle switch row right here. And right here is the cable we need for the Autostop Eliminator. There's a little red tab on it. Just pop that red tab out. Just kind of pinch that red tab and pull it out. And then it'll free up the little toggle so you can get the plug out. Take our plug, and note that we have an exact copy on the Autostop Eliminator right here. And we will take the female end of the plug to attach right here. Clip it down, clip the red part down, make sure it's secure. And they gave us some zip ties to make sure that the little module doesn't click around. So I'm gonna go ahead and zip tie this guy up here. Cut that extra zip tie here. Careful not to clip any wires. And then we will take the new male end of this clip, reach behind to the Autostop module, and then click it right in. And it goes in real easy. And before we hang this dash back up, let's start the car and make sure it remembers our auto stop status. Click auto stop off. I'll turn the car off. Turn the car on. And right away, the auto stop here turned itself off, which is excellent. Now that we know that works, I'm going to zip tie this module a little better. And we got the radio just kind of hanging in place, not screwed in and not clipped in all the way. So for part 2 of this install, I have my Course Motorsports mount. And this one should be pretty easy. Just running the wire is what's going to be hard. But we have our 7mm socket again. And what you're going to do is just kind of grab above the steering wheel and just pop this up. And we're going to keep going until we get access to a bolt right there. So make sure you don't drop that. Then you take that screw that we just had, gonna thread it through right here. Line it right back up without getting your finger trapped. Make sure it's pretty snug. So once you have the clip in, or the mount itself, we will take our ball here and screw this on. They gave us an Allen key to tighten that down. And now we just need to run the wire through the dash here for that MagSafe charger. So the first thing I'll do is take my Course Motorsports MagSafe mount, and I'm going to separate the back screw from it. I'll put the screw over the ball, and then I will grab and push over the ball so it grabs. And then we'll screw it back in. And that's a pretty sleek placement for that. I think that's great and out of the way. But now I need to make sure my cable will reach. My plan was to run this underneath the dashboard and see if we can get it plugged up right here. Plan is going to be to remove the glove compartments in the storage area to loosen up the top so we can run a wire all the way down to our charger from our fuse box here. First thing we'll need to do is grab this plastic here, just like the other side. It's going to go back towards you. And there's 6 clips behind there. Next up, we're going to have quite a few bolts to remove. So looking at our glove compartment, I think we've got about 7 bolts we need to remove. We got one up here in the top left corner. We got one below it. If we come over to this side, we've got another one up top. Come down again. We got one more below it. And then coming across the bottom, we've got 4. 1, 2, 3, and 4 back there. We'll remove all of these and we should be able to pop that off. And then once we do that, we'll open this top compartment, and we've got a couple of Torx screws. We got 2 across the top and 3 across the bottom that we'll see better once this lower part's removed. So I'll take my 7mm socket. So now I should be able to wiggle this out. And I lost one of my clips down here. So now I'll be swapping out my 7mm socket for a Torx bit, and this is a T15. We got 3 here and then 2 on the inside. So after you get those 5 out, there's one more right here. It's not really easy to see behind the screen. The screen definitely has to be out for this. And just try to get it out without damaging the screen or scuffing it. And then that screw comes out. If we close this, we should be able to kind of pivot out of here, and then be careful with our plastic clip next to the screen, and we get the whole compartment removed. So then the whole glove compartment's removed, and we have a lot of access up into here. So I realized that this USB extension that I was going to use, 1, wasn't long enough, but 2, that it has a correct side, that it only works in one orientation for 5-volt power to get passed through. It's not a smart like USB 3 or 4, it's just USB-C. So I'm going to be using some fat electrical tape just to hold it all together. This isn't really doing any insulating, just keeping it together so that we don't have to worry about this coming loose behind the dash after all of this hard work. I wanted to use some heat shrink for this initially, but I didn't have any that could get around these connectors. Not perfect, but I think it'll hold. So now I'll feel much more confident while running this wire through the dash. What we're trying to do is get from this point here where we'll have the charger through the dash and kind of down into here. I'm gonna remove this because it's kind of in the way. We've got our charger. We've got the end that we want on our MagSafe head. We've still got the radio out, and we're coming in right behind the radio following this line that our mount is on. You're just gonna grab the wire and kind of feed it up into this space. There's a hole you can access it through down here. So right behind the plastic panel. Okay, I see it. Just gonna be actually grabbing it. All right. So we've got that portion of the charger out. So we're coming out from behind the radio. I'm gonna try and get a better angle to show you what I'm doing. I've got the phone mount here where I fed the wire up through this little hole, and it just rode this gap, and I could pull it through right where the mount was. The wire out here, I fed the other end back in and took it down through this gap where I could kind of reach it through behind the radio. And then I pulled it through here. And then now I'm gonna feed it all the way behind here to where we need our fused power. So I'm trying to be careful to not get in the way of the air filter here, because that will be serviced. I think that's our wire run. I'm gonna trim these zips. So I zip tied the wire right here to this frame member, so it's kind of up and out of the way, and it's tucked high enough up that it's tucked high enough up and away from the cabin air filter. She kind of can't see, but it's right here. So the wire then continues to come. So the wire then comes out through here, just behind the dash. And this is a like smoothed corner. Below it was a sharp corner. And then I've just got the wire out here ready to get fused up. So we fed the wire up this edge to the Chorus Motorsports. It came out in this little pocket. We fed the other end down that pocket, fished it behind the radio through this hole, came across through this hole where it touched here, pulled it through to this cross member, zip tied it up, and then pulled it all the way over here so that it's out of the way and we're not impeding on any airbags. And then from here, once we get our fuse tap in, we'll just use another adapter, get all this set up nice, and we'll do a little one-to-one here. We got power to our charger every time the car is on accessory mode. Before we go back to the car, there's a few things I want to adjust on this buck converter. One, I don't think I'm gonna have enough space for these little mounted wings. I'm planning on using a VHB tape behind this. I'm not gonna drill any holes. So I'm gonna snip these off with some flush cutters. Now that we have the wings cut off of this, we need to prepare our little mounting plug here, or mounting attachment for the ground. So we don't have enough metal here on the end to crimp for a good connection. So we are going to strip it just a little bit. So now we have a pretty good amount of wire there to crimp. Grab it in here, nice and centered. Crimp tight. That's not going anywhere. And then we're going to trim this just a little bit while we're here. And the other thing that we will need is our USB male-to-male adapter, but we don't want to tape it yet because we need to make sure we have it with the right side up. We're going to go ahead and add this power first. Okay, so our Micro 3 fuse tap got delivered. So we're going to get back into this panel here on the side for the fuses. And we have our USB cable from earlier. And we need to identify a ground that we're going to use. And I think I'm going to use that bolt that's right in there. I think I'm going to use this bolt right here if I can get to it safely. And that looks like it's directly to the chassis on unpainted metal. We're going to try that first, and then we'll get our add-a-fuse in. So I loosened this bolt here with a 10mm. I couldn't really show you without blocking it. So I've got that back on there. And we're going to add this wire here underneath the bolts, but between the bolt and the washer. All right, so I've got my ground for the buck converter behind that bolt. A little tricky, it's tight in there. Just kind of get it loose with the wrench, and then you run out of space for the wrench. So I use my fingers to get the last bit loose, and then tighten it finger tight, and then you can get a wrench back in to tighten that in, and that should be a great ground connection for us. So next up, we're getting into the fuse panel, and we're going to be pulling out this last red 10 amp fuse, and that is our F26 right here, F26. That is our 10 amp USB charge. And so we're going to pull that fuse and add our add-a-circuit fuse here. So I'm going to reach in here carefully and pull out number 10. Going to grab our add-a-fuse. This top one, I believe, was the existing circuit, which we will have at 10 amps. So we added our top circuit here, which is 10 amps. And then we're going to add a second 10 amp fuse. And this is for the USB. Then we have our second fuse added up there, and they are close together. We're going to go ahead and add this in. So I figured something out about why this was so hard to put in. I had to kind of shave these corners off with a utility knife, because there's little raised bumps you see right there, the two between the prongs on the plastic. This add one had a little lip on the outside, and on the truck there is plastic to prevent that lip from going in. It's just a tiny little bump of plastic you can see right there. I just took a knife and sliced it off, and the fuse is the right size, and we're using the correct amperage, and it slides right in now with that little blocker out of the way, and hopefully that blocker doesn't come to bite me later. And then we're on top of this other fuse, but it's really the only way this one fits in here. So we'll take our add-a-fuse tap here, and we'll take the wire from our buck converter, place it in there. We want to kind of match the direction of the crimp out of the factory so you don't inadvertently loosen it. Make sure our wire's in there. Grip it real good, not going anywhere. We should be good to test our USB connection here, and then we'll get this all mounted and tucked away. We have our buck converter wired into our add-a-tap here. And then we have our USB to USB-C cable here. And when we turn the truck on, we get a green light on the phone charger right there. So now we're going to tuck all this away and get it set up just right so it's professional and doesn't make any noise or fall out. I've got some VHB tape from another project from 3M. And I'm going to cut a couple of strips across the back of this buck converter so I can mount it. I'll be able to get 3, but it looks like just 2 is the max. So I'm going to come through, trim the excess, and then peel. And then I'm going to be placing mine right here on this flat plastic. So I'm going to make sure the wires are all coming out of the correct side, that it's out of the way, and give it a firm push. Then I'm going to swap my USB so it's not behind that add-a-fuse. So I just turn my truck on again to make sure that I have it correctly plugged in. I've got the green lights on the phone mounts there, so we've got power. And so I'm going to take some electrical tape and wrap this USB-C part so that it doesn't come loose. And then I need to do some cable management so this doesn't rattle around. So just get a little bit of this tape. And this will hopefully prevent this from pulling out on its own. And we're gonna just kind of tuck it into this hole up here, I think, so that it's not far away, it's still accessible, but it's not dangling and bouncing around all this electrical stuff that's just kind of out of the way. These seem good where they are. So I think that's it for the phone mount. Just to recap, I've got the excess USB-C wire tucked away where I can still get to it. And these other wires just kind of pushed to the side so that they're not bouncing around too much. We'll take our fuse panel and make sure we get all lined up. All right, so now we're gonna reassemble all this. The first one to go back is gonna be this top storage area. And sits nicely like so. So I'm gonna take my screwdriver with the Torx 15 bit and grab a screw. And the first one we need is going to be behind the screen. So the first thing we're going to do is take our upper storage unit and kind of thread it back through, being careful not to scratch our screen. They kind of just snap in place. And then we'll grab some of our Torx screws and our Torx 15 screwdriver. And I'm going to put one in here, just kind of hold it in place. And then we're going to take another screw here, get the one right next to the screen. Then we get another one for underneath. Yeah, press here. Remember, going for just tight. Just remember, we're just going for getting this tight, not too tight, just kind of snug. And then we'll get our top clips inside of here. And our last of the Torx. So with our Torx done, so this next bit is our glove compartment storage. And this, we want to make sure we get all of our clips lined up in these holes, and then we'll follow up with our screws. Take our 7mm socket and just we've got 4 in this upper section and then 4 across the bottom. You can kind of just feel for them. Got one on this side. That's the bottom. So now we're going to get this screen back into place, and it needs to kind of hook up under there. And I want to make sure that all of our wiring harnesses are tucked away. I think where I'm getting caught is that new Autostop Eliminator. It was a little trickier than I thought to get that auto start eliminator tucked in nicely. So now that we have the center dash back together, let's make sure it all works, such as the engine starts. See that our auto start automatically turned off, so that's still working. The lane lights up. And now we'll continue putting everything back together. So next up, we'll put this dash piece back in. You just got to kind of make sure you're aligning it in the proper direction. Find our clip points. And it all snaps back just like that. Next up, we'll take our center trim piece here and kind of line all of our holes back up. And then we'll take our screw here, this guy back in. We'll take one of these right here. So we'll get our trim piece for this side and just line up all the pry points. And that should snap right back into place. Next up, we've got a little trim piece here. We've got 3 clips and then 2 screws. Just make sure our little wire is out of the way. And then we'll screw these back in as well. Then lastly on this side, we'll put this trim piece back and kind of just slides in and then clips in. Next up, we've got the trim piece that comes up and under here. And then we need to remember to screw on the radio. So now we're putting this piece of trim back. There's a hole here that we need to line up right here. And the 2 clips push in. And there's a slot right here that goes down. And while we're here, we'll take this screw, put this guy back. So we've got our trim piece, fits in here. Getting all that back in. In our dash, we have our course mount hooked up. You can just lean in on it to close that up. And then we can tighten up our plug here. Last but not least, we're going to cover up our fuse area again. Make sure we line up our holes. It all snaps into place. That phone wire is tucked through the dash, and we've got a very discreet phone mount charger with MagSafe by our driver. That wraps up the whole video where we have added the phone mounts all the way through there. And we've also added our Autostop Eliminator so that we no longer turn off at idle when we stop. Really had this whole thing apart. We got it back together all right.